Okay.
Let's get
How you
Mark.
doing? Let's get Mark. Mark, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. Happy to be here with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Have you done a lot of work lately in Wing? I mean, last time you've released, I mean, the changelog was a bunch of features. A lot of them came from under your envelope,
Under your wings.
under your wings.
I've done every time I do the changelog, I do the command that it's oh, you're not sharing it yet, but I do git short log, which shows it shows all the commits, right, and it groups it by author. And I'm like, oh wow, I guess it's always a good time for me to reflect on also what I've done, because I'm like everyone a little selfish. You're like, what did I do first before I look at other people's things? It's nice. Okay, because sometimes, and I'm sure everyone feels this way. Sometimes you don't feel like you do enough, and like you get caught like in the weeds on things, and you forget like, oh, actually, I did some shit. It's not bad. All right. So it's always good.
You did go to declaration, which is like a big shit.
Oh, nice.
Oh, you know what? I didn't put that in here. I forgot.
You didn't put that in?
Damn.
Well, because I said I first look at the list and see what I did, and then I'm like, okay, let me try to talk about myself as little as possible. Because I don't want to be like vain about it. So I only have like one section for the language server stuff. We'll get to that. But yes, that did happen. I'll try to bring it up again when I show it.
I'll show your I'll show go to declaration when we.
Okay, good. I hope it's working.
Is it? No, it's working. It's working. I used this today. Was it hard?
No.
No?
Didn't do it. I just didn't do it until now. Anyway, so changelog. Here it is.
Do you want to do like this, or do you want to do like this?
Oh, yeah, go for it. What? Oh, I thought you were going to do the intro.
Oh, the intro, man. I forgot about the intro. Which intro?
Bring it up. Hell yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Now, and this looks good, I think, as long as the text is readable, which there is some code, so let me know if that's not legible. So 17 contributors to this, and for 67 changes, which so far, every single time I've done this, the number of changes, even though it's been mostly the same amount of time between change logs. Like last week, I think it was 64.
Mark, I'm having problem hearing you. Lad, are you having problem hearing him as well?
I can hear him.
Okay. So
I'll try to move the mic over.
Much better, man. Thanks.
Okay, cool. So yeah, lots and lots of changes, and this changelog will be a little bit shorter, just because last time I'd had way too many changes. I think it hurt the focus a little bit. So the format's a little different, a little bit bigger focus on things, or on less things. So to start off the fun, it does always seem to be Chris leading the charge. He then tends to have like usually the bigger changes, so it's nice to lead with them. So Wingpack, aka we now have libraries. So you can use Wingpack to create an npm compatible tarball that you can npm install or publish, and the consumption of it is a lot like any other JSI library. Now, if you look in tarball, you'll actually notice it's Wing files. It's not exactly a JSI library, but the way you consume it in Wing is that way. And so now the capability is unlocked. It's a huge change, a huge unlock for us. I put this actually isn't an upload. I did some trickery.
Yeah,
this
I'm like,
fake npm page.
Who published my library?
Yeah, I did it. I just published it without you. It actually got to version 39.15. It's crazy. I've been doing a lot of work
editing. A lot of HTML editing.
Also, if anyone notices I made a mistake in the screenshot, feel free to point and laugh at me at the mistake I made, if you can find it.
Wing packaging.
Yeah, the URL is wrong.
Oh yeah. Well.
I just tried to type in anyway. I don't know what else to say about this. It's kind of like an obviously huge thing. I don't know what else to go into details. I know Chris is still actively working on the library side as a whole, so there's more to come, I'm sure. But this is huge. I realize we're actually covering up the name.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
I
I'm
guess
on
we
it. I'm on
have
it.
to move
Oh,
for
okay.
that. Yeah,
Okay. So maybe
Uh,
let me try this thing. Yeah, let's do this thing.
that should be fine. We'll see if the code is too small.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, you guys have seen Chris's face. I think he's been in, or his digital face. He's been in every changelog, I think. So, but for the people that haven't been, see some more names later. I don't know, anything from you guys to add on this.
Yeah,
Well, do we have any published libraries yet, or just an ability to publish library?
I tried to find one. I think maybe Chris. I didn't ask Chris. I meant to ask him if he had published like a test one, but no. I mean, there's nothing like actually out.
Well,
For sure.
I think we have the external, the EX namespace, right? The table, I think, maybe DynamoDB. I'm not sure what's in it right now, but those things. Do we plan to get out of to get published away? Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
that's going to be cool.
Yeah, and I think the thing that that we're trying to do, and I hope we'll have soon, is we have some plans for what we're trying to call kind of like a managed publishing experience for Wing libraries, because my experience publishing a lot of libraries is that the publishing part, the part where you're actually vending the library, bumping versions, creating change logs, API compatibility, all that stuff is usually pretty hard, and it's really hard to actually do correctly. And so we have some ideas on how to offer a more managed experience for publishing libraries, and we're going to experiment with that and see. Hopefully, it's going to be really awesome and really easy to create new libraries and share code in the Wing ecosystem. So I'm really excited about that, because I feel like that's a huge pain in other ecosystems and a big barrier for people to publish libraries, and especially keeping them at high quality. And so that's coming up, but I'm super excited by this, because I feel like the ecosystem side of Wing is the most interesting part. Eventually, the interesting stuff is going to be on the ecosystem side. It's not going to be what we're trying to do is we're trying to build this low-level mechanism, right? Like this language and the SDK, the foundation. But the creativity comes from the ecosystem, and so like that's going to be super interesting to see what's popping up there.
Awesome.
Sure.
Mark, before we move forward, there's a suggestion for Matthew, and to basically spawn up another show as the changelog. And I say, let's talk about royalties. I would say that's
Exactly. There is a show.
I mean, well, we do have the In-Flight magazine is in theory if not the long form version of this, it's like I guess the more easy to consume version of the changelog, right. the separate thing, because that's what it ends up being, like a
awesome.
changelog.
Right.
So yeah, no, but I want to keep being a part of the Wingly. It's nice. It's nice that we're centralizing our creative efforts into this.
Great. Okay, Matthew. I think that's not going to happen this time. You're trying to take away my to distribute.
Your only star. Your only star.
All right.
Okay. Next one.
Next one. Okay. Next one is change from Gary. Another name you'll see a lot here. Another small snail face you'll see in the corner. Mm-hmm. As usual. That's still the picture we're using for him. In the CLI, you can now, if you don't provide an option, I think for any of the commands, so wing it or wing test or wing compile, a default entry point will be, or a default set of entry points, if possible, will be chosen. By default for wing compile, it'll be a main file or blah 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 .main.w, and for wing test, it'll look for all the wing tests in the current directory. Just a small usability update. I think especially for Wing tests, as we keep evolving what it means to test in Wing, this is sort of like when I think about defaults for most test runners, I'm like, okay, run the tests in my project. I don't care where they are. Just run them, or I want to filter them. Gary also added filtering previously. Like I want I don't know. This interface should become a lot simpler, and this is, I think, a step in the right direction. So yeah, thank you to Gary for that.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, I love those small ergonomic changes.
Yep.
I'm gonna move on to a big one. So not only from a first-time contributor, so thank you to Jade for this, but a pretty big change, a whole entire namespace of functions.
Wow.
I didn't list all the APIs here. It's all the ones you'd expect from a file system library or a namespace. Although some additional ones like reading and writing JSON and YAML, those are not usually built in. And a lot had this comment on that PR that I would agree with, that it's the design for the APIs here were very in line with the Wing's goals or tenets, design tenets. It was very, if not batteries included, what's the other term here? Like, it's good defaults. Just having really opinionated defaults that I mean, you were probably going to do anyway. And there are options. You can configure how I think one of the ones I suggested was like make directory will automatically recursively create directories. It's not a default in most file system things, but like you're going to do it anyway.
No, like
you can turn it off if you want to.
mkd-p. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know about you, but I write that in my scripts even if I don't need it, just because
Right.
just to make sure. But I mean, you can turn it off if you need to. But so overall, the PR introduced a lot of great changes like that, and I think we've all been waiting for file system operations.
Yeah, there's actually a follow-up discussion that we had in the office a couple of days ago, whether files and passes, whether this should be kind of almost like a primitive in the system. I mean, whether there should be kind of a type. When I write a directory, a path type, which is kind of in JavaScript, you want to do a relative path, you use the __ dir name, for example. So that just works with Windows out of the box, right? Yeah, you're hoping, right? Yeah,
it does. Not only does it work with Windows, another opinionated aspect of this, which it's kind of scary. It's a scary thought, but maybe we'll see how it pans out. But by default, all of the returned paths from all the FS operations will change all path delimiters to forward slashes, to the POSIX-like slash.
To the correct slashes.
It's really because even though I don't
to the normalized one.
They're normalized. I mean, to be clear, it does not turn Windows paths into POSIX paths. That's not actually like a possible thing to do generically, but it makes them look like it. And for relative paths, it's good enough, because relative paths, the only difference in Windows is the slash, and the allowed characters. I mean, there's some messy bits there, but like on a day-to-day basis.
And the case sensitivity in some operating systems.
Listen, it's not perfect.
No, it's
but the main thing that comes out of this, I think, especially if you work in the CDK a lot and you work in a mixed platform environment, if you work in this type, like, I want my outputs to be deterministic as much as possible. I don't care what platform I'm running on. I want if I call a function with a path, like to join a path or something, I want the path I get back out, if it's relative, to be the same on both platforms. There's really, like, functionally, there's no reason it shouldn't be. So I'm really interested in this approach. If it doesn't pan out, it doesn't pan out. But like, I'm really glad we're trying this, because I don't think anyone does this. I don't think any file system library does this, and I feel like they should. I feel like it's kind of cool.
Let's see when does it blow up?
I mean, because in theory, there's different things that are allowed in paths and Windows and Linux, and it's there's probably one of these articles of like what developers don't know, or like misconceptions about paths.
Yeah.
I'm
like
sure there's one of those. And
yeah, exactly.
Like the time zones one.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll get bitten here, but I'm really happy that like Jade started with this approach, and so it was a really good idea that they did that.
Yeah, and
thanks again, Jane.
The work was impressive, I have to say. Like from first time contributors, it's the quality was very high, and I was very impressed by the work, and it was really fun to review.
Yep. Okay, on that, and related to that, actually, The next one is a change from Lance, who this is not his first contribution. I believe it's his second. His first one was like a documentation or test change, I believe. But now his second one was probably the most like advanced change from a contributor ever, probably. Because he dived right into the compiler internals and fixed a pretty major issue with how the compiler is working after like doing like a full visit of it. And I remember seeing he even like did like a documented read through of the compiler source and type checking source, and I was like, wow, that's great. That's not an expected thing for one of your first contributions to a project, I think. So we're really, really excited to see it. But anyway, the change was that variadic, when you called the function that had variadic arguments, it just didn't really type check it.
Small stuff for a strongly typed language.
It was I think and it wasn't really noticed because one, I mean, it was introduced recently, so you know, it didn't get heavy use, and also it worked in the happy path because you like generally you don't try to make the compiler fail, so most people were giving it types that should work, and then they seemed to work, and everything was fine. But yeah, it turns out it was not always. I think there were some cases where it would, but let's just say generally it wasn't really type checking arguments you passed. So like for the example, like this add dependency, I believe, takes iConstruct or iDependable, I believe is the interface it takes, and it was just kind of just taking whatever you wanted.
So it compiled.
Yeah, so this would compile. I mean, it wouldn't work.
Yep.
It would break during the presynth or whatever, but it was yeah, it should have been a compiler error, and it wasn't, and now it is. Thanks to Lance for coming in and fixing that and improving diagnostics around this. Not just the variadics, but like arity, meaning like number of arguments and optional arguments and struct expansion. Like he kind of went through and vetted all those the errors and diagnostics there and made them all work a lot better. So that was really, really great PR.
Awesome.
I don't have a lot to say about it other than that was really cool. Really nice.
Nice. Very nice.
Cool. And I will move to
the next one.
To Marchier's change to add cloud.domain, which is this was in conversation for a long time because there did seem to be a hole in between, like, you know, cloud.api and cloud.website, and it's like, okay, well, you know, these things, like, there's something missing. Like, generally speaking, you deploy a lot of these to a domain, but like, where does the abstraction fit, you know, in between all these things? And I think Marcia did like an RFC process and went through it and like trying to figure out the design, and now it's here. I mean, I haven't used it, so I can't speak to you know, its usefulness, but I can understand, like, yeah, I'm hosting my website on a domain, and I want to manage that through my infrastructure, but also, like, and I probably should have mentioned this on the slide, if I'm deploying it to AWS, I'm probably gonna already have a domain that I want to use with my thing, but I still want to represent it in my infrastructure. I don't want it to just be like a secret thing. So it's represented here, but I believe when you compile or that you actually provide command line arguments to push in. I really should have put it here because I can't remember off the top of my head, but like you can give the ARN for the for probably the certificate or the hosted zone ID, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Could you speak to that a lot? I actually can't remember it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the exact names, but basically, you like, it's the first time we're introducing a resource that's in a sense a reference to a resource, right? Like, it's not really creating the resource when you're compiling your Wing program. The Terraform file, if you're compiling it to AWS, it won't include an actual Route 53 domain, but hosted zone and whatever. But it has this we're introducing this concept, and we're calling it values right now, kind of like homage to Helm, but maybe we'll call it options -O or -V. Currently it's -V -values, and it's basically either through a command line or through a YAML file that basically sets some parameters, and the domain resource requests these values. So basically, when you compile your program to AWS, it'll error and say you need to supply this information in order for me to be able to actually produce the AWS representation. And so that's an example of where you're actually you're connecting to an external here. That's in, yeah.
So as kind of Marcio shows in the PR, that basically when you compile this to TF AWS, the compiler basically tells you that you're missing the IAM certificates and the says them. And then you pass them through the values file.
Yeah. And you can see that it accepts the resource path. So if you have multiple domains, and you can basically say, that root/default/my domain, your domain, their domain, whatever, right? Like you can actually specify. And I'm using this in the containers. I'll show you later, but I'm also using the same mechanism in the containers libraries.
Yep. Awesome. Great. Thank you, Marcio. Another great contribution by Marcio. That's awesome.
Yep. Thank you so much for that. Another big piece of the cloud puzzle, cloud abstractions puzzle. So next up is as I mentioned, I didn't include code declaration here, but Lara will show it off. The main thing I wanted to mention about some recent changes to the language server, aka the IDE experience improvements, is kind of an experiment. I'm right now, the language server will give you a lot of information in a lot more cases. Like hovering over a class will actually show you the constructor and what arguments it takes. That's something that always bugs me about some other, like I'm about to call new class, and I don't know, like, okay, sometimes it'll show the signature completion if I type the parentheses, and this is, but if I'm not doing that, then I can't see it. Always bugged me about a lot of other language servers. So I'm trying out this. It gets a lot. Like sometimes it's a lot of information, but I guess, would you rather have too little or too much? I guess I'd rather have too much, even if it's a little uglier. So I'd love to hear feedback about it, though. Please send messages to Eyal about feedback on this, or me if you want. It's fine either way. But I'm hoping that it can really, help you not have to go reference docs or have to remember stuff and do less trial by error to figure out, like, okay, what do I actually need to do here if you have more information at your disposal.
Yeah, I've already really enjoyed it. Thanks. It's really useful. I think the optional values, the sorting, like the documentation, all that stuff is super useful.
So just to make sure I understand correctly, and I'm looking at this right now at the playground. This is basically when I create a new bucket, I can actually look at the bucket and I see all the fields of the bucket class. Is that what you're basically referring to, Mark?
Yeah, because I think before, and I've noticed that most, okay, I say most. I last referenced like TypeScript, for instance. When you hover over a class in TypeScript, it just kind of just tells you that it's a class. It's like, all right, it's cool. It's cool. It's good information. It doesn't tell you anything else about it, unless it has doc strings on the class itself. It doesn't tell you anything about the class. I'm like, okay, well, but you know about it. Why don't you tell me something about it? And so I always thought that was strange. So now here, if you hover over a class, it'll tell you about all the public, specifically public fields and fields or properties, members. That's the word I'm looking for. All the public members of the class, and it'll tell you about the initializer and the in-flight initializer, the arguments that it takes. I specifically mention that because I feel like that's usually what I actually care about when I'm looking at the class. Is how do I make one?
Yep. No, it's great. So, it's great. I'm looking at domain right now. I see domain name, then I see all the fields. Interesting.
And all this includes like the usual. So struct expansion is as important as usual. So it always tries to expand the struct and show the fields sorted by required first. Yeah, I'm hoping this will help a lot.
Great.
Yeah, I can't wait for renames. That's my next
refactor rename. Refactor rename.
Renames.
It's probably also super easy. I don't know. It's a lot of these are like there's just 1,000 things to do.
Yeah,
they're not each individually too bad.
Yeah, no, and I think like in certain cases, not in every case. I think in some cases it's actually the opposite, but in certain cases it's pretty amazing how easy they are to implement. I think the go to declaration was beautiful, right? Like, and I think it's because we have this data structure in the compiler, and everything is references and symbols, and we have span information about where everything is. So I like it. I really like it when these designs fall into place, and then these things become easy. Renames would be really, really powerful and really useful. Definitely on my wish list.
Is there actually an issue for that? I feel like there should be an issue.
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that there is one. I can
because we're all just assuming it's going to happen.
Right, because
I think it's like, oh, we'll get to it.
On me, I'll open the issue.
I would say maybe it's a good first issue, Mark. I mean, it feels like you're doing most of the stuff here. I'm wondering whether
maybe now. So anything to do with symbols is usually easier. Symbols are usually the easy because like we know all the symbols are. So it's easy to like say even in all the files that are referenced, it's easy to find symbols. So that's why go to declaration and hover both operate on symbols in basically the same way. Like look at a symbol and tell me things about it. So it's not always a good first issue, but this one might be. Rename actually might be a good candidate for that. So, yeah.
Probably with a bunch of pointers.
Yeah, it's because I think the main difficulty is that you're adding a new method. Like it's not you're adding a new, which means you have to deal with the Rust interop with whatever. But it's you should be able to look at how they're added and be like, okay, I can just copy paste. How we do that.
And Chris is adding another ticket to his wish list. Go to definition.
And go type definition of balls. Yeah, that's true. Yep.
Cool.
So cool.
Let's move to the next one.
I think that's why Mark is not talking about the stuff that he owns, because every time he talks about it, there's like a flurry of requests coming in from everybody.
It does feel like that sometimes. You're glad. Good thing I don't talk about like GitHub workflow stuff here. I get buried.
Wow. You would be buried. That's correct.
Yeah. So next one up, which I hope is something, because my screen's turning black there. Okay, yeah. So the ex.react app. I was trying to remember the actual resource name. So React app. This is kind of, and I think Suf mentioned this last time that she was when she was on the show, that this was coming up, and here it is. It's effectively supercharged website resource. So cloud.website exists, but it's pretty simply like, hey, take the static resource, and I say simply, I'm giving more credit than that, but it takes some static assets and put it somewhere. Now it's accessible. Cool. The React app though now adds a couple extra functionalities that I think most people are looking for when they're creating actual, like, real applications that are websites. Notably, it controls actually the build workflow of how the React app becomes static assets, because realistically you're writing it not, you're writing your app, even if you're writing it in JavaScript, you still want it to go through a bundle step or some minifying or whatever. It's going to go through a process of being built. You don't want to have to build it and point your Wing thing to the assets. I want this to be like a holistic process. So the React app resource actually points to your source. And it knows about how that source becomes the dist, the distributable, and it can be a part of that process. And this includes injecting values from preflight into the React app, which is huge. That's how you get in the example here, like an API URL. So you can build your cloud, and you can access it in a way that makes sense from your React app, a way that you're probably very used to. You have a URL, you're just going to talk to it through your client. And it also, I didn't actually try this. I'm curious how this works. It also works with hot reload. So like, I guess you can run if you wing it, you can actually have like a dev server running for your local site. And so if you change your React app, it'll actually publish to your simulated website as well. I'm assuming that's how it works, which if so, it's really cool.
Awesome.
We need to bring Suf here to demo this.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty amazing, and the environment stuff is also really interesting. I don't know if you.
Yeah, he mentioned
I
the
touched on
API.
it.
Yeah,
But it's
he
definitely
mentioned
there's a lot to think about there because it's kind of like I know we talked about this through a couple times about the design of like what does it mean for this interfacing to happen. It's almost because it's kind of like binding. It's kind of like that, but there's a lot more mess and difficulty around it that would be really great to solve. And I think this is one big step in that direction. I think we have more ideas on it, but this at least gets you in the door for sure.
Awesome. Thanks too for this. I haven't used this yet. It's hard enough for me to start a React app. To figure this out. But I think I will. I think it's interesting to see the Wingit experience is super interesting for me. So I think I've seen the video, but I would love to see it in action.
Yeah, definitely everyone should give it a try. It's very cool. And with that, I'm actually done.
So
as surprising as it is.
Show us again, Mark. Show us again all the slides. I wanna talk about. We haven't talked about this. Time to use Wing. That's nice. Master of your domain. Master of my domain. That's nice. Can you show us the slides again for a second?
I can.
You have the little joke in every one of the
yeah.
one of the slides.
Yeah, I'm sharing it again if you want to look.
Yep. So we have time to use Wing, which is basically kind of the hooks, right? This is
so
what? Yeah.
So they're supposed. Okay, for the record, they're supposed to be jokes that are just kind of like there, like subtle.
Yeah.
And now you're
I feel like if we go over each one specifically, because they're not supposed to be that funny. So if you go over them really like with a really strong eye, you're like, okay, haha. You know?
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of humor I like.
All right, let's go. Let's go.
We got information. Have you noticed this? You want information? We got more information for you.
You're killing me now.
No, actually, the master of your domain. That's the thing that kind of caught my attention. That's I don't know why. It's probably.
Technically, I'm meaning it. What were you gonna say?
Is it a Seinfeld reference or is it?
I mean, I was thinking about it like that. It is.
Okay.
But
awesome.
I mean, it's also just a phrase you say. I mean,
yeah,
you can also say that. But I meant it as a Seinfeld reference.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. King of the castle, master of your domain.
Awesome.
That's what I've noticed. Yeah. Awesome. Habit path testing.
Habit path testing. Classic hits like read file and write file. I'm just gonna turn the screen off. I'm gonna.
Yeah. Okay.
It feels so weird to go over.
Okay. Okay. We can do it. We can do that. I just want to highlight it.
Oh no! You know what? I'll talk about this one. Wing left pads. First person that makes Wing left pad a published package.
Nice.
So this one this was intentional. I want someone to make this, and then we can report them to NPM.
Awesome. Great.
I love it.
Well, Mark, thank you very much for this very informative and fun, and thanks for all the contribution. That's great work, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on.
Thanks.
Again.
Thanks, man.
Am I going?
Mark.
Okay, bye.
You're going.
You're welcome to stay if you want.
You're welcome to stay. Yeah, sure.